Tune in this month on the Cutter Historical YouTube channel as September will be a September to remember, as many sports will be broadcast. Baseball, we have the OTP Legends League Season 4 alongside PC Replay Baseball at times. It's the pennant stretch. Above the Rim College Hoops, the 64 best teams through the 16 tournaments that I pre-done will be set up, and a tournament winner must be held. Second and 10 PC football, as college football on Saturday and NFL on Sunday. 128 team single elimination battles will commence. Stone Cold Hockey, we will talk about the 1981-82 season set and a playthrough there. Cutter Top 10 sports videos on major sports, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, and a few others. ASG Golf goes Canadian as all four tours head to Glen Abbey in Oakville for weekend battles. NHL 94 Emulator mods, as ROMs will be set up of different national teams and different NHL formats. Of course, chat about boxing. We'll have a grand tournament of winners from Legends of Boxing and much, much more. It's the Cutter Historical YouTube channel for September. Don't miss it. And now back to your feature presentation. Hey there, how there, ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Down. Welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 sports video. And today we are diving back to the land of the Alouettes, back to the land of the CFL, back to reality. As it is the top 10 Grey Cup games of all time. Yeah, the CFL's championship brings us some great games and all that. Americans don't really know much about the Canadian Football League and all that. But know this, there's some great NFL players who played in the CFL. Cam Wake played in the CFL. Joe Theismann played in the CFL. Lawrence Tynes played in the CFL. Giants fans know who the fuck he is. And Warren Moon played in the CFL. Doug Flutie played in the CFL. Heck, even Tom freaking Cousineau played in the CFL, and Vince Ferragamo. But the fact of the matter is that these great Grey Cup games are legendary. Now, when I did my research, there was a good Grey Cup game that missed the cut, and that was 1971. I know it's an old one, and it was Calgary versus Toronto on the rain-drenched tartan turf of Empire Stadium in Vancouver, the predecessor to BC Place Stadium. But the fact is, it will always be remembered as Joe Theismann. Remember Joe Theismann? I talked about him. He was the quarterback for Toronto against Calgary, and handed the ball to Leon McQuaid, who was trying to go off tackle to the left, get in the end zone, and give the Argos a chance to win their first Super Bowl, first Grey Cup, since 1952. But he slipped on the turf. Calgary ended up winning the game 14-11 and getting their first Grey Cup in 23 years. It took until 1983 for the Argos to break their Grey Cup drought. Nevertheless, here's the list. Number 10 is the 1954 Grey Cup, and one of the oldest Grey Cups to actually be completely archived. Now, way back in the 90s and 2000s, on Grey Cup week, CBC would broadcast old Grey Cups and all that. And I used to watch a lot of them, although I really shouldn't have. But anyway, the 1954 Grey Cup saw the Eskimos take on the Alouettes in one of the oldest games to still be around. Well, Canadian TV with CBC only started in 1952, but 1954, the world, like the microwave of the Western provinces, would see Edmonton versus Montreal. Montreal was up 25-20, and then they decided to do something crappy. Like Montreal decided to decide like an option play. Like Sam Etcheverry at QB, he was good, and then all of a sudden Chuck Hunsinger allegedly threw a pass, an option pass, and it was called a backward pass, which meant it was a fumble. And Jackie Parker, who was also the quarterback for Edmonton, actually ran the ball 90 yards for the touchdown, and Edmonton won the game 26-25. Montreal fans argued that it was a forward pass, which meant that was incomplete. But, that was just debated for years. Of course, technology in 1954 was a lot different than it is nowadays. There was no such thing as instant replay. The Eskimos would make this game one of their trio of terror against the Alouettes, as Montreal went to the 55 and 56 Grey Cup finals, but also lost to Edmonton. The 2017 Grey Cup makes its list at number 9, one of the most recent ones. I believe it's the most recent one on this list. I know you could say Alouettes against Winnipeg in 2023 when Winnipeg were flying high and Montreal were massive underdogs and they ended up winning in the last few seconds. But no. The Argos were playing the Stamps. The Stamps lost the 2016 Grey Cup, which I will talk about later. But the fact is that Calgary was looking to get back on the Grey Cup high horse. In a snowstorm in Ottawa at their stadium, the 105th Grey Cup was an instant classic. The Argos were down 17-8. Ricky Ray was still around as QB and helped the Argos out. He had a 100-yard touchdown run to pass to Deontay Thompson, and then Cassius Vaughn, when the Alouettes were up by 8 and were marching down the field to maybe run the clock down or kick a field goal to ice it. The guy caught the ball, but for some inexplicable reason, he decided to try to run forward. If he had not run forward, if he had stayed down, then that's the end of the play. But he stretched forward, and then the ball got stripped. And Cassius Vaughn, 109 yards, post to post, coast to coast like Space Ghost, made 109 yards. Well, it wasn't in the end zone. In the CFL, there's the main field is 110 yards, 55 yards to one side, and then an extra 55 yards, so 110 yards. So Cassius Vaughn on his own one picked up the fumble and ran it back all the way for a touchdown, and then kicked a late field goal to make it 27-24, ruining the Stamps' chances at a Grey Cup in one of the most unbelievable ones of all time. Number 8 on the list is the 1976 Grey Cup between Ottawa and Saskatchewan. It was always Rough Riders versus Rough Riders, one of the biggest ones ever. But yeah, the 76 Grey Cup was amazing. All that. They had a classic back in 1966, but in 76 it was better at CNA Stadium or Exhibition Stadium in Toronto before they had to renovate it for baseball. The Rough Riders would face the Rough Riders. And the Rough Riders were up 20-16. Confused? You better be. Well, Ottawa was down 2016, and then Tony Gabriel looked in the end zone. Tom Clemens looked, the former Irish quarterback, through the end zone. Tony Gabriel was wide open. I can't remember. Oh, it was Ted Provo who was supposed to cover Tony Gabriel, but he failed, and Gabriel was wide open, touchdown, and Ottawa won the game 23-20. Saskatchewan was heavily favored, but Ottawa pulled it out. Winning the Grey Cup. It would be the last time Ottawa would have a Grey Cup for 4 decades. Anyway, at number 7 is a Grey Cup 20 years later, 1996, when the Argos took on the Eskimos in a blizzard in Hamilton. It was unbelievable. They had to stop the games a few times to get the Zambonis out there to clean up the yard line so that people knew where to go. It was a haphazard one. Edmonton had a great few good moments, including a touchdown pass to Eddie Brown, who caught it off his shoe tops and it scored a touchdown. And then Henry Gizmo Williams with a punt return for a touchdown to do the job. But Doug Flutie and his Argos were not going to get denied, even though everyone in Hamilton wanted to beat the tar out of these Argos because, Hamilton, Toronto. But anyway, the Argos did their job. Doug Flutie did his job, Jimmy the Jet Cunningham, and a few other people like Paul Massotti. But yeah, the Argos survived 43-37 over Edmonton. It was a good game. Very good game. Number 6 is the Fog Bowl, 1962. Winnipeg versus Hamilton. It was a massive game because the Grey Cup used to played on a Saturday for years upon years. And ABC was even going to broadcast highlights of it for the Wide World of Sports. So, the CFL was going to be on American TV. We have, Jim McKay, the legend that he is, being there too, being at Exhibition Stadium in Toronto. Unfortunately, though, there was one problem. Winnipeg was up 28-27, but then it had to be halted in the fourth quarter because of the thick fog off of Lake Ontario that blanketed Exhibition Stadium, which was kind of the mistake by the lake. Cleveland fans would probably say, hold my beer, but no, I think it was Toronto. Nevertheless, the 1962 Grey Cup was huge. And like a fog, CBC tried to do their coverage and all that and couldn't do it. So they had to halt it in the fourth quarter with like 6 minutes left. But everything was just the way it was 28-27 with 6 minutes left. No team scored a point. And Winnipeg managed to win the Grey Cup. Like 1961, when they beat Hamilton in overtime, they won this one at the Fog Bowl in 1962. So they knew what to do. It was a surreal conditions of suspense, and they had to make it a 2-day event. And it was the 50th Grey Cup, strangely enough. Number 5 is the 94 Grey Cup, BC versus Baltimore. It was the classic Canada versus United States area. CFL decided to expand to the United States to try to get more traction and more financial stability. In 1993, they had a team not in Baltimore. Sacramento had the team, had the CFL US all to themselves. And then they failed. And then Las Vegas, Birmingham, Baltimore, Shreveport, and a few other cities had their chance, their day as a USA CFL team. The Baltimore Stallions were massive. They had some great players. They had Tracy Ham, Mike Pringle, Donald Igulbue, Carl Anthony. They had some great players on their team. And they pushed BC to the limit. The Grey Cup was in Vancouver, so the Lions had home field advantage. Danny McManus got hurt, so Ken Austin had to come in. No, sorry, it was the other way around. Ken Austin got hurt, and Danny McManus had to come in. But the fact of the matter was that, the Stallions had some good defensive play, so were BC. It was 23-23. Pasaglia, the BC kicker, missed a few key field goals, but then they marched down the field, and then Pasaglia, with no time remaining, kicked the field goal, and BC, through the uprights, gave Canada a win over the United States. It was just national pride on the line. The atmosphere was electric, obviously. But the good times wouldn't stop for Baltimore. In 1995, they actually ended up going to the Grey Cup final and beating Calgary and Doug Flutie. This was the last game Flutie played for Calgary before he bolted for Toronto. And that was the last time Baltimore or any NFL team in the United States had a CFL game. The CFL ripped up its U.S. plans because they weren't working. U.S. cities were not really that much into a team. And then, it was all about it, except for the Stallions. Baltimore was looking good. They were looking forward to another CFL season. But because of the CFL USA experiment sucking, and also the fact that Baltimore was getting another pro football team, the Baltimore Ravens, after Cleveland headed for Baltimore, they call it an expansion team, if you will. Baltimore had no use for the CFL. Fortunately, though, a CFL city spurned by the fact they weren't in the CFL actually came up in 1996 and plunked the team. That team? Yes, that's right, the Montreal Alouettes. Contrary to what popular belief, the Alouettes actually had a hiatus. In 1987, just days before the season started, Montreal folded. And then for 9 years, there was no CFL in Montreal. But then Montreal got the team back. So, it was a happy ending. At least Montreal got their team back, got a team. Speaking of Montreal, how about them at number 4? That's right, the 2009 Grey Cup, aka the 13th man. It was the Alouettes Rough Riders. Saski was up 27-11 in the fourth quarter. It looked like they were going to win the Grey Cup, and again, the Alouettes were going to choke in the final. But Andy Cavill managed to come back. A couple of touchdowns and 2-point converts did it. And David Duval missed the field goal, and Saskatchewan took it out of the end zone, meaning that Montreal couldn't score any points. One tiny problem, though. Well, if he kept in the end zone, that would have been 27-26. But one problem, Saskatchewan had one too many players. In the CFL, you could have 12 offensive players and 12 defensive players per snap, whereas in the NFL, it's 11 each. But there was a 13th man on the field. Saskatchewan was known as the 13th man for the fans and all that. Saskatchewan was not too happy. They went The kick was shorter for Damien Duval, and he put it down. He gives Montreal a 1 point victory, one of the wildest endings in Grey Cup history, and making people know the Canadian counting system. The Alouettes would win the next Grey Cup in 2010 and then have to wait 13 years for another one. Number 3 is the 2016 Grey Cup between Ottawa and Calgary. Remember when I was talking about the 2016 Grey Cup in a sense when I talked about the 2017 Grey Cup? This was it. Ottawa were massive underdogs. The city had some CFL problems. In 96, they folded. And in 2003, they were the Ottawa Renegades. They lasted 3 seasons, and then Ottawa, once again, without CFL football, they couldn't find the financing. But by 2013, they got their team, the Red Blacks, and they've been playing in Ottawa ever since. Ottawa was a massive underdog, even though Henry Burris, a former Calgary quarterback, would be for Ottawa. It was huge. The Stamps actually nearly had a chance to win the game as I can't remember the running back. I would say John Cornish, but I'm probably wrong. But anyway, the running back had a chance to go into the end zone, but a swipe tackle by an Ottawa defender forced the runner down at the 3 and a field goal to tie to force overtime. Ernest Jackson made a big touchdown catch to make it 39-33. But Calgary had a chance to win the game on their possession in overtime, but they failed. Burris had a pre-game knee injury, was named MVP, the underdog storyline, the fairly conclusion, and giving Ottawa its first championship as a city in 4 decades. Number 2 is the 2005 Grey Cup, aka the one that Alouette fans hate to see that happen, try to forget happened. The Eskimos and the Alouettes were battling tooth and nail. Montreal, of course, being the East, Edmonton from the West. The Grey Cup in Vancouver was amazing and all of that. It wasn't the first Grey Cup to be held in overtime. It was 1961 when Hamilton and Winnipeg just had a couple of possessions per half overtime period to decide overtime. But the current system was that each team would have the ball at the 35 and would try to drive in for a touchdown or a field goal. Each team had 1 possession. Thanks to a Tony Tompkins kickoff return in the 3rd quarter, Edmonton almost pulled it off quickly, but Montreal forced overtime, and then everything swung back and forth. Montreal made a great touchdown catch in the end zone in the first overtime. Edmonton did the same thing, and then Edmonton got a field goal in the second overtime. Montreal needed a field goal to tie, a touchdown to win, but failed miserably and all that. And Montreal can't believe it, but yeah, Edmonton went in overtime, and I was not too happy. And finally, number 1, and it's not a Montreal Alouettes Grey Cup, I assure you. It's the Grey Cup in 1989 between the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Hamilton Ticats. 83 points, still the record for most points combined in a Grey Cup game. A lot of people love this Grey Cup and all that. The 75th edition in 1987 also deserves a massive honorable mention too, because of how electric it was, and especially Henry Gizmo Williams' 115-yard missed field goal for a touchdown. Nevertheless, Skydome opened up in 1989, and their first season, they hosted the Blue Jays, winning the AL East and choking in the playoffs to the A's. But then the CFL took over and had the Grey Cup in Toronto, indoors. There would be 6 lead changes, dazzling offensive performances, and a climatic finish. The finish was huge. Saskatchewan was up 40-33 late with like a minute left when Ken Austin of the Ticats threw this high-arching pass, and somehow, in some freaking way, Tony Champion twists himself enough to make the catch in one of the greatest Grey Cup plays of all time. Tony Champion's twisting catch in the end zone. It's like, what just happened? Well, they tied the game, but gave Sasky enough room to kick a winning field goal, and Dave Ridgway did so with seconds left, a 35-yard field goal. It's one of the highest intense moments ever, and it actually helps Saskatchewan out a lot. People said that Sasky actually were in deep trouble, but yeah, it was the first Grey Cup in 23 years. They broke the 23-year jinx. But a lot of people actually said that it actually hurt the bottom line for the Rough Riders because they were playing all these extra games, but all on the road. Like, well, fuck that. I mean, you guys win a national championship in one of the greatest games of all time, and you're bitching about finances? Play the game, people. Play the fucking game. I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.